Greetings. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Climate and Infrastructure Committee for March 20th, 2025. I'm Katie Cashman. I'm the chair of this committee. Before we begin, I want to offer friendly reminders to all the members and staff and public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning to increase the accessibility of our proceedings. Please speak slowly so that the captioners can transcribe all comments for the broadcast. Thank you. This time I'll ask the clerk to call the roll and verify a quorum.
Councilmember Vita.
Present.
Osman.
Present.
Chavez.
Present.
Chowdhury is absent. Vice Chair Koski. Present. Chair Cashman.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum, and thank you, Council President Payne, for joining us as well. We will start with our consent agenda, items 3 through 11. Item 3 is designating the location and setting a public hearing for May 8th for the 2025 alley reconstruction project. Item 4 is amending the 2025 capital appropriation resolution by decreasing the appropriations to the alley renovation program and increasing the appropriation to the unpaved alley construction program. Item 5 is authorizing a cooperative funding agreement with Hennepin County for pedestrian safety and traffic signal improvements on Broadway Street Northeast between Washington Street and Buchanan Street Northeast. Item 6 is authorizing a cooperative agreement with Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority for the construction of the Nicollet Avenue South Bridge over the Midtown Greenway. Item 6 is concurring with the city engineer's request for a variance from state aid operations rules for pedestrian improvements at 8th Street Southeast and 10th Avenue Southeast. Item 8 is approving the Phase 1 concept layout and easements for the Logan Park Industrial Reconstruction Project. Item 9 is passage of a resolution of support for the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit Extension Project. Item 10 is setting a public hearing for April 8th to receive public comments regarding the city's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, Stormwater Management Program, and annual report. Item 11 is receiving and filing an updated 2024-2025 work plan for this committee, as well as a document of our Year 1 accomplishments. And I will move approval of items 3 through 11. I will also recognize Councilmember Chowdhury has joined us, and I will recognize Council President Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Cashman, and thank you, colleagues, for letting me join. I just wanted to speak on item number 8, Logan Park Industrial. Just wanted to thank Public Works leadership and staff for separating that project out. There's a lot. It includes Quincy Street, Jackson Street, Tyler Street, just north of Broadway, and there's been a lot of community engagement around Quincy Street specifically, of which the team has gone back to the table to work with community to incorporate some deeper feedback, but I appreciate being able to separate this vote out into different parts. So what's moving forward is the Tyler Street side of the project, and I'm just thankful to Public Works for working collaboratively with community on helping to address the hopes, wishes, and dreams of Quincy Street. So thanks for having me here.
All right, thank you for that. I will also briefly speak to item number 9, which is a resolution in support of the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit Extension. The Gold Line is actually opening this Saturday, March 22nd, between St. Paul and Woodbury, which is great. And Metro Transit wants to extend this to between downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis by 2027. So this resolution of support is needed so that they can amend their transportation policy plan to include this. So thank you, staff, for putting this together. Really excited about having BRT between downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis within the next couple years. Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? So on the motion to approve, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Those items are approved. Next, we'll take up the public hearings. First public hearing is project approval and assessment of the 24th Street East resurfacing project. And here to kick off the public hearing is Hazel Wolf from Public Works.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair and members of the Public Works, Climate, and Infrastructure Committee. My name is Hazel Wolf, and I'm a supervising engineering technician with Public Works. I'm here to present to you the 24th Street East resurfacing project and recommend passage of resolution ordering the work to proceed and adopting special assessments in the amount of $245,067.07 for the 24th Street East resurfacing project, and passage of resolution requesting the Board of Estimate and Taxation authorize the city's issuance and sale of assessment bonds in the amount of $245,067.07 for the project. 24th Street East consists of a Minnesota State aid street bounded by Cedar Avenue South to Portland Avenue South, and a local street bounded by Portland Avenue South to Fifth Avenue South. The MSA portion was reconstructed in 1972 and has a pavement condition index of 67. The local portion was reconstructed in 1969 and has a pavement condition index of 71. Public Works hosted an in-person community meeting at Phillips Community Center on Monday, March 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m. There were 121 invitations mailed and one attendee came to this meeting. On December 5th, 2024, the City Council designated the improvements proposed to the 2025 street resurfacing program. The purpose of the asphalt pavement resurfacing program is to extend the life of some city streets which are not scheduled for any preventative maintenance, renovation, or reconstruction in the foreseeable future. This resurfacing program is addressing city streets that are at a point in their life cycle where a new surface will extend the street's life, improve ride quality and neighborhood livability, and help slow the overall deterioration of our city street system. The 2025 resurfacing program is identified in the 20-year streets funding plan and was included in the capital improvement program. The proposed street resurfacing special assessments were determined by applying the 2025 Uniform Assessment Rates, UAR, to the land area of benefited parcels located within the street influence zone along the improved streets. These assessments are not calculated based on project cost alone. The city uses a formula that combines influence area with an annually established UAR. This formula is carefully considered and applied by city staff and is intended to account for and reflect each project's value to the benefited properties. Information has been provided in the notices as to how persons may prepay the special assessments in full without interest if they so choose. City Council has passed resolutions whereby a deferment of special assessments may be obtained by showing hardship for any homesteaded property owned by a person 65 years of age or older or retired by virtue of a permanent and total disability. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm going to proceed to open the public hearing. We don't have anyone signed up. Is there anyone here who does wish to speak on the 24th Street East resurfacing project? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and just ask a couple of questions here. I'm really trying to understand like the breadth of resurfacing projects that we're going to have this spring and the PCI limits that lead us to like put this forward. Mm-hmm. Do you know the pavement condition index for this street?
Thank you, Chair Cashman. I do. Okay. So there's two different portions to this street. One is the Minnesota State Aid portion, and the PCI of that is 67. The local portion between Portland Avenue and Fifth Avenue is 71.
And can you remind us, like on that scale, where does it fall?
Sure. The scale, thank you for the question, Chair Cashman, and the scale is between 0 and 100, 0 being no street at all and 100 being an absolutely perfect street.
Thank you so much. And then what percentage of the cost of the project is being covered by the special assessment?
I saw the numbers.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Chair. I believe we're at approximately 20% of the cost. If you look at the fiscal cost in here, the financial information, which I just misplaced, but where is that? Anyway, let me confirm, but I believe, oh,
Sure.
Yes, sorry, right before the map in your packet, or in your, on the file, we have total expenditures of 1.4 million, and the assessment bonds are about 245,000.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Osman.
Yes, thank you. I really want to thank the staff. I attended the community conversation that you hosted, and wanted to thank you for coming, even though we have one participant. I think you were able to get some information of what the thought is, and especially what I have added. Just want to repeat one more time that in that district, in that area, 24 and 10, it's a very busy pedestrian area. There's a cultural mall right there, and I have seen traffic drivers are getting annoyed by when people are either pulling in, pulling out, or stopping for a passenger. It's something that maybe on this project, the staff can focus on a way to improve the pedestrian safety and people that are driving on 24. That's the only comment I have, and thank you so much, and I'm happy to approve this item.
On Councilmember Osmond's motion to approve this item, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. Our next public hearing is passage of an ordinance related to water service and terminology revisions. Here to kick off the public hearing is Annika Bankston, Director of Water Treatment and Distribution Services. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Annika Bankston, Director for Public Works Division of Water Treatment and Distribution Services. The item before the committee is to hold a public hearing on proposed amendments to 3 titles in the City Code of Ordinances, and the requested action is for this committee to recommend approval of those amendments to the City Council. The full legal markups of the proposed ordinance revisions are included as attachments to the request for council action, but I will briefly summarize those into 4 different areas. The first area is inclusive language. Public Works is working to ensure we use general neutral language throughout all of our documentation and project and data sets. The action today is to replace the term manhole with maintenance hole throughout the sections of the ordinance. And again, this is to demonstrate respect for people of all gender identities, and especially our workforce who use these maintenance holes to access our city infrastructure. The second area is the use of plain language. We are proposing changing from the water industry technical term of curb stop to water service shutoff valve. This change describes the valve's purpose and improves clarity to property owners and residents who actually own this valve as part of their water service lines. The third area is with respect to fees for shutoff. As currently written, there is language in Title 12 that implies that a fee for water service shutoff may only be imposed in the event of delinquency. This fee is set based on the actual labor and equipment costs for our division to perform an actual shutoff. However, water service shutoffs may occur for a variety of reasons. It is the enforcement mechanism of last resort for failure to perform backflow testing, failure to allow access to the water meter, or if there is use, misuse, or waste of water that adversely affects the health, safety, or welfare of the public. The proposed ordinance change allows the city to charge the fee for shutoff due to any violation, not just for delinquency, and also clarifies the notices required specific to situations of delinquency. The fourth change are technical changes and enforcement provisions related to cross-connection control and backflow prevention. The proposed changes ensure the ordinance language conforms to current plumbing code, clarifies the actual cross-connections that must be protected against backflow, and enables penalties rather than administrative fines for noncompliance with backflow requirements. Such penalties could be added to the water utility bill. So again, those 4 areas complete my brief overview of the proposed amendments, and I'm happy to respond to questions the committee may have or any that arise during the public hearing. Thank you in advance for your recommendation to approve these ordinance amendments.
And thank you for the presentation. We'll now proceed to open the public hearing. Again, on this public hearing, we do not have anyone signed up, so if you would like to speak on this ordinance, now is the time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask if there are any council members with questions on these proposed changes to the ordinance. There are, yes, Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. It's not a question, just a comment. Thank you. While it may seem small about finding that gender language really important, Councilor Chowdhury and I have been working with our staff on our street vendor ordinance and our staff from the administration found even gender language in the street vendor ordinance that has been there for many years. So I think eventually it would be great to look over the entire municipal code of ordinances to see how we can just, change them instead of just finding them as a one-off thing. So just thank you for that.
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chavez, thank you for that. And this was actually an opportunity. We took the opportunity to make that change given the other ordinance amendments we had in process. So I know that's an intentional effort that Public Works does have. So thank you. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for offering tours also to your facility. I know Vice Chair Koski and I had a chance to go, and Councilmember Chowdhury was there as well earlier last year, and I would just highly recommend it to other council members and other staff because we do have just an incredible water treatment system in the city, and I believe we are top in the nation and only second in North America behind Vancouver. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's thanks to all of your great work. So thank you so much for this. Happy to move approval on this item. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. That motion carries, and I will recognize Director Sexton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I just want to make a comment regarding the comments from Councilmember Chavez. We're actually doing a concerted effort in all of our documents to go through and look for any historically, I would say, problematic language, including that gender-neutral language. So that's a concerted effort that we have. I don't know that all of those changes will come through council, but we just wanted to let you know that we are making a very, very focused effort on doing that and recognizing that we have a Public Works equity team that raised that to our awareness and brought that forward from staff, and we're really trying to take that seriously as a response to their feedback. So thanks for that.
Thank you for the additional context. Moving on, we will next take up our discussion items. Our first is receiving and filing the Vision Zero 2025 annual report. Here to present on this is Ethan Foley, Vision Zero Program Coordinator in Transportation Planning and Programming. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Cashman, members of the committee. Thanks, Jen. As you all know, Vision Zero is our goal to get to zero traffic deaths and severe injuries on our streets. And we've been working on this for closing in on 8 years here. In 2024, we had a significant decline in traffic deaths, as you can see, but we're still a little higher than we were prior to 2020 with all the things that happened in 2020. And, this trend of increased traffic deaths since 2020 has been seen around the state and the country. Actually, Minnesota had a big increase last year, so it is notable that we had a significant decrease while the state as a whole had a significant increase. It is a smaller, number overall, so we do recognize that there's some variation year to year as well. Talk about numbers. You all know that I also think it's important to recognize the people involved. Every one of these stories is important. I'm going to pull out a couple as I always do. I'll start with Riley, who was an 18-year-old freshman at the U of M studying theater and German. Her dad said she was pursuing her dreams. She was walking back to her dorm from a performance at Mixed Blood Theater when she was hit by a driver who was drunk and ran a red light at high speed. She loved horses, summer, sunflowers, and butterflies. Her remains are now in a butterfly urn in a room surrounded by sunflowers after she donated her organs and tissues. I'll also share the story of Rose and Esther, who were best friends and described as pillars of the community, who brought love to those around them. They worked as community navigators for the Cultural Wellness Center for more than 25 years. On their way to visit a friend, they were hit and killed by a driver who ran a red light at high speed. Rose's son said she was a loving, caring lady. She made sure everybody in the community had what they needed. Esther's daughter said, "I'm going to miss my mom. That was my world. I was in I was with her day in and day out. I was hoping to come home to my mom, and it didn't happen. It should have happened for these and everyone else in families on this list. And so I think we all know that these are unacceptable. And let's take a moment just to read through the names here. Thank you. Okay, now back to some stats. This time I read it ahead of time, so I wasn't quite as, last time I know it was a little harder for me, but thank you all. So you can just see when we look at kind of across kind of different metrics that we are looking at, I think we have the prior to 2020 and then the post as I talked about, so I like to kind of look at both of those in comparison, and you kind of see where we're at kind of fatal crash and severe crash wise. All crashes, continue to be way down since before 2020, and there's a variety of factors probably going on there, including some underreporting likely. I will note that while we've seen the decrease overall in fatal and severe crashes, we did see a pretty marked increase in pedestrian and bicycle crashes last year compared to 2024. Now that's still lower than it was prior to 2020. But this is something we're going to be looking into a little bit more. I think there are some data things going on here as well, and getting some more crashes reported last year than we were for a little while, but it's something we're looking at a little further. We continue to see those disproportionate impacts in our transportation equity priority areas in particular, which had 60% of our fatal crashes last year. This is just severe fatal crashes. It's hard for us to get the outline of those equity priority areas, but you can get a sense of where those are concentrated citywide. Speeding, this is something I've been talking about for a few years now as a real focus, and you can see why. So this graph, I've incorporated both the number of fatal crashes that involve clear speeding, the green line, as well as the percentage here. And so you can see that in 2024, now we're at like 80% of our fatal crashes involve clear speeding. So that total number went down because we had fewer fatal crashes, but it's just speeding is the thing, and in a lot of ways for us. I also wanted to pull in some information here. There's a lot on this chart, so I'll try to kind of point some things out here. Overall, we see that our high injury streets are where most of our fatal crashes are happening. And I want to acknowledge that, so this is looking at 3 years from 2022 to 2024. Our high injury streets are based on data that through 2021. So like what we knew were high injury streets before those are still where we're seeing those fatal crashes happening, very much so. And you can see those are typically on the higher, not all higher traffic streets are high injury streets by any means, but you can see that, MnDOT and then particularly county streets are where we're seeing a lot of the fatal crashes. Our local system, which would be like streets that are eligible for neighborhood traffic calming, those kind of streets, we see relatively few fatal crashes compared to our other systems. And parkways, we haven't had any in the last 3 years. So I'll just give you a sense of kind of how this relates. And this leads us to, like, within Vision Zero, we continue to work to prioritize investment on these high injury streets because we know that's so important for addressing the challenges we're seeing with traffic deaths. So just some highlights from the work that we've been doing. You can see a general update. I will note, our Vision Zero action plan goes through this year. We will be doing a little update. We're planning to do that and bring it forward likely early next year. So that's something we're going to be starting to work on here, and it will be an update, so not like a full revamp of everything. Okay, some highlights. So we continue to do quick build safety improvements focused on our high injury streets. Just if you look over the 4 years that we've had our Vision Zero program, now you can see that we've addressed or installed safety treatments at more than 250 intersections now. And we are transitioning this from more of the quick build, flexible post to concrete treatments. So that's more of our focus now as well. But we've been able to really get at a lot of our high injury streets proactively. I'll just also note, I think we've only had one fatal crash at a location where we've installed treatments. So folks say, does it do anything? And we'll be doing a full analysis, evaluation of that, but we've only had one fatal crash at these locations since we install things. So, and that isn't conclusive, it's not definitive, but we have seen improvements in studies we've done so far, and we'll be doing more on that. Okay, and then we're also, we have a lot of capital projects coming. You can see some of these that were completed in 2024 that had significant safety improvements, a lot of these in partnership with Hennepin County, really important projects. We also were very successful in getting new grants as well for safety projects. So excited that we've been able to celebrate some of these with community, and we'll have more coming this year as well, and getting out there. And we really try to incorporate our safety best practices in all of these. Just a reminder that we were awarded a Safe Streets for All grant last year. We are working to finalize our grant agreement with FHWA. We have not heard any things that suggest that there will be a change to that to this point. And so we're working and focused on finishing that up, and hopefully we'll have that soon and we can start this work soon.
Very sorry to interrupt. Can you define FHWA?
Sorry, good question. Federal Highway Administration. Our neighborhood traffic calming program continue to be very popular, I think, as you all know. We will have a more complete report on this and responding to the legislative directive next time. So. We've also been working, as you all know, on advancing our traffic safety camera pilot. Just a little bit of update on that. I reported to you all on this late last year, but since then we've put out, as you hopefully have seen, a list of candidate locations for the initial pilot phase. So we have 51 candidate locations. We're getting community feedback from those currently. And we will be selecting from those 5 initial locations that we'll be having for the launch of speed safety cameras. And then we will look to expand from there, adding red light cameras in additional locations over time. We do plan to be back to this committee in the summer to share details of our camera location analysis and those where we're planning to locate those initial launch locations and other priority locations. We also do currently have an RFP, request for proposals, out for services to support implementation of this as well. So happy to answer any questions there if anybody has any in the interim. And then I just want to acknowledge, Vision Zero is a collaborative effort. It's very important we're working across city department. One of the things I want to acknowledge is the great work that the city attorney's office does around prosecuting driving while intoxicated cases. And so they were also recognized by the Minnesota State Patrol Trooper who had the most DWI arrests in 2024, who dedicated that award to the city attorney's office. So I appreciate all their work and partnership on this as well. It's very important. So with that, I'll see if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It's always, really hard to see those names every year. But I know that it's been a challenging few years due to the pandemic and just like shifting societal behaviors. I think a sense of nihilism at that time probably contributed to the way people were driving, and we're still trying to come back from that. But there's a lot of great work happening. So thank you for that. Thank you for being innovative. Thank you for bringing forward the red light pilot. That'll be coming forward this year. I'm hopeful that that'll be another great tool in our toolbox to get to Vision Zero. So I'll recognize Councilmember Osman.
Thank you for sharing those names. It's really hard to imagine what, losing someone in a traffic accident or traffic deaths. I can see the increase of bike and pedestrian crashes, like 35% more. And I think it just comes down to the behavior of the driver and the speeding that comes with it. I'm glad to see the project city has invested that we're not seeing crashes at all, maybe one crash or something like that, or pedestrian safety. So just encouraging the public to be safe and really drive safe. I had, sadly, on my ward, Franklin and Portland, where a driver was speeding and hit like 5 people that were walking, and I can see the behavior of change for the last few years, where people are just driving more because they're not afraid of the consequences, or maybe there's not a cop, right next to on the road. But how long does it take to, once you identify very high risk traffic street or area, how long does it take for the city to say, well, here's a project we're planning to do here, and how long does it take, if that is traffic calming, if that is just building out the street? I know it costs, there's resources involved, there's process involved, it takes a longer, and is there some kind of temporary protection or making sure that street is safer until the project gets complete?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Rosman, great question. I'm going to pull back up a map here. Sorry, I should have been heading in this direction. So this map, shows our Safe Streets for All projects. I thought maybe it had our high injury streets on here all told, but it doesn't. I'm sorry about that. But one of the things I just want to acknowledge is of our about 120 miles of identified high injury streets, nearly all of them are going to see significant safety improvements within the next 6 years. And so our Safe Streets for All grant was really focused on locations where we didn't already have plans for significant treatments. And so we were able to kind of fill the gap on most of the remaining projects, but it still takes time. So, we've moved really rapidly with our quick build treatments. As I noted, more than 250 intersections we've installed treatments since 2021. Those typically we identified a location and then we're installing something within 6 months. And so that's really trying to move quickly. There are some things we do also operation-wise with traffic signals and other things to improve safety through our traffic and public parking services division. So we do look for opportunities when we're seeing trends, and then some of the bigger picture things take longer, but we have been really focused on being proactive, reducing the amount of time, not waiting for us to be able to do a street reconstruction to install those safety treatments we know can make a difference. So that's a big focus of ours. So.
I have seen the street speed meter controller. Do you offer those to the neighbors that might request when they see that the speed is increasing, and maybe seeing a big number, red number, that you are going over the limit and flashing? Is that something Public Works offers to these neighborhoods?
Yeah, Chair Cashman, Councilman Rosman, we do have a speed wagon, we call it, or speed trailer, and community members can request the speed trailer. We have multiple ones of those, and we move them around responding to community requests or data that we're seeing out on the streets as well. So we part of our Safe Streets for All grant actually is expanding the number of those and being able to do even more of that to meet community demand. But yes, I encourage folks, if they are interested, to get in their requests soon, because we do get a lot of demand for that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Just the last comment. I'm really excited about the pilot program for street cameras. I believe that those will be super helpful and will tell this driver's behavior that now, it will cost them, and we know who they are. So thank you so much.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you so much, Chair Cashman, and thank you so much for your presentation, as always, Ethan. I know it's a tough one that you have to come and do every year, but you put a lot of effort and passion, and I know our Public Works Department does too. Just first want to start off by saying this is moving towards Vision Zero and really doubling down on making sure that we make our streets safe for everyone, whether they're biking, driving, or walking, is a really tangible way that our city is ensuring that residents' lives are saved. Like, we have the power to do something in this situation, and it's just wonderful to see the progress that we're continuing to make while talking about how much is still needed, how much resources are still needed, kind of raising the alarm on that, right? We're still not below the pre-2020 numbers. In my ward in particular, this last fall, there was a 28-year-old who stepped off onto the street, onto Hiawatha Avenue, and they were hit by a car, and they were in critical condition, and that was something that could have been prevented. And now my office is engaging in conversations with MnDOT to talk about having like a safe pedestrian crossing, what it means to prevent that type of fatality or severe crash that has been noted for that section of the corridor as being higher than other areas. One thing that my office worked with you on and Public Works was at 38th and Longfellow, there was a significant amount of crashes that were occurring, and bollards were put up there as a traffic calming measure, and the neighbors and the local business community couldn't be happier with the changes. There was always almost crashes or crashes that were happening right at that intersection, and since those bollards went up, there hasn't been a single crash. And I, from time to time, will go walk over there or will drive over there, and it feels really, really different. And it's just amazing to see how like a small scale project like that could make a complete difference for a neighborhood. And I'm also just super proud that we're going to the legislature this year and advocating to our state leaders for more funding for traffic calming projects like this one, not only for the city of Minneapolis, but our entire state, because we know that this work is necessary for the whole region, and behavior change isn't something that we can just do in the city of Minneapolis. It needs to be an all-out effort, and it's also been a conversation we've been having at the Transit Advisory Board. How do we get to zero crashes, zero fatalities? So I'm just really grateful for this presentation, and grateful just to kind of see the road ahead of what we're working on together to continue to make these improvements and continue to advocate for resources so we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Cashman, and thank you, Ethan, for the presentation. I always appreciate learning more when you come to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, or the Climate and Infrastructure Committee, and very insightful. I did have one question particularly. I think one very big supporter of the Vision Zero plan. I think one of the best ways to get to Vision Zero is with the neighborhood traffic calming program. I think it is something that we have continued to increase funding for, because one of the biggest topics that I'll talk about myself that I hear from my office is about the traffic calming in neighborhoods. I think one of the best ways to reduce traffic deaths, traffic accidents, is through changing infrastructure in our communities to make sure that streets are actually safe for everyone. So I guess my question is, and if this isn't the right presentation, but I saw a slide on it, is do you know the status of the program this year, when we're expected to hear back, how many programs are funded? I believe we added an additional $1.5 million to the budget process in December because we had heard very loud and clear from our residents about the need to drastically increase funding for that program to make sure that more projects are fulfilled.
Yeah, Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chavez, thanks for the question. So I mentioned that we will be, our different staff will be here next time to report back on the details of responding to the legislative directive. I think they'll have an update on the plans for this year's neighborhood traffic calming program as well. The stats here, I should have had maybe on the screen. These are 2024 numbers, so those are installs based on the 2024 program. So
I'll be patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. Just wanted to note that the traffic calming legislative directive is to come back April 10th. I think we have that in our plans. Yes. Thank you so much. Seeing no one else in queue, I'll ask the clerk to receive and file that presentation. Thank you so much. Our next and final item is receiving and filing a presentation in response to a legislative directive requesting information and data related to Nicollet Mall, pedestrianization and associated downtown transit improvements. Here to present on this item is Kathleen Mayall, Transportation Planning Supervisor in the Transportation Planning and Programming Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Cashman, committee members. I'm Kathleen Mayall, Transportation Planning Manager within Public Works, and happy to respond back today on the legislative directive related to Nicollet Mall and the Downtown Transit Changes Project. The directive is listed here. At the center of this work is the idea of envisioning the next phase of Nicollet Mall. It's a new vision for the mall focused on pedestrianization and activation for people, families, businesses, visitors, for both everyday enjoyment as well as one-off special events. In the fall of 2024, the mayor released the Downtown Action Plan, which is a roadmap for revitalizing downtown in the wake of a lot of changes that we are all experiencing downtown, the wake of COVID, changing workplace dynamics. And a key strategy of the Downtown Action Plan is to focus on pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall. There are a number of success metrics listed at right that the city will be tracking as this unfolds. These have to do with activation, vacancies, what types of new investments are happening downtown, and what sorts of activities are happening on the mall. This vision for Nicollet Mall is akin to, and in the spirit of a lot of other great pedestrian malls found throughout the U.S. as well as internationally. A couple examples here from Burlington, Boulder, Santa Monica, Miami. These are places that people want to go when they're visiting a city. They're places that you want to bring people when you have people visiting you. The size of these malls can vary. The ones shown on this screen range from 3 to 4 blocks to a mile. Miami is the largest one here. Nicollet Mall fits within that. It's just over 3/4 of a mile. And really, these places can become the key heart of a city and a place that draws people from all sorts of walks of life to really be a part of things within their community. So there are really 2 project goals here. One is activating Nicollet Mall for people. And that is really being undertaken by a strong partnership between the city, downtown stakeholders, public and private nonprofit organizations. The mayor's office and different downtown partners have been convened through the Downtown Action Council, which is coming out of the Downtown Action Plan. This includes the Minneapolis Downtown Council, those private companies and so on, and the public or the philanthropic entities, and they are working together to detail what is the next phase of the street's legacy. And while the more public and more visible planning for that vision is kind of starting up and ongoing, there's been a key piece of preparation that Public Works has been leading on for some time. We've been working in partnership with Metro Transit to figure out where transit can move that really upholds and uplifts the transit service so that transit remains just as good as on Nicollet Mall or better. This is our city's busiest transit corridor. There are nearly 12,000 on and offs on the corridor each day, and we need to ensure that that transit remains high quality, both to, from downtown as well as through downtown. There are also thousands of other people that ride those 5 transit lines that go through Nicollet Mall that could experience improvements based on overall system improvements on the transit corridors. So ensuring that we get this right takes some time. We've been working to understand the trade-offs of the different options and ensure that we can move transit in order to allow that vision of Nicollet Mall to proceed. We've been partnering since 2023 with Metro Transit, and we've developed 3 potential options for where transit could move to, and we've conducted 2 phases of engagement to hear from people about what they think about these 3 options and this idea. We anticipate transit will move onto new north-south spines next year, and we also are planning that work and engagement on that future Nicollet Mall will be ongoing this year and beyond as that transit is moving. Here's a timeline that outlines various stages of this work. There are unique pieces that bring this entire vision together that are all related but unique. So much of what the LD questions is related to this first phase identified in this orange box, which is about where transit will move to. That has really been the focus to date. We're nearing the end of this step after undergoing 2 engagement rounds, one last summer and then one over the winter, and really digging into the 3 options that we have worked together with Metro Transit to provide. There are a lot of steps ahead of us in this process, and all of them will include different elements of public engagement, related to the capital project on the selected corridors, related to the future of Nicollet Mall, and more details on what is included there. So to dig into the 6 questions that were asked as a part of the legislative directive, I'll go through them one by one, and happy to answer questions as well. So in terms of what are the plans on Nicollet Mall, the city has budgeted $400,000 for 2026 for programming on Nicollet Mall. Planning for that activation will be undertaken and includes the partnership of the Minneapolis Downtown Council and the Minneapolis Foundation, other downtown property owners. There are a number of events planned this year, similar to years past, in advance of a more permanent transit move. So the Taste of Minnesota, the Aquatennial, Holidazzle are all being planned for this year yet. And there was even the St. Patrick's Day Parade earlier this week. And so as transit moves off the mall permanently, it won't just be for these one-off events, right, where buses need to be routed and so on. There'll be more of those day-to-day pieces. So right now what we have to look forward to is the one-offs where transit is moved temporarily, and then additional activities are being evaluated and planned for both 2025 and 2026. To address the planned investments related to the corridors where transit will move to, I'll start with a little bit of a background on the 3 options. So there are 3 options, and in all 3 of them, the routes 11 and the 25, 2 of the current routes down Nicollet Mall, are planned to move to Hennepin Avenue. This is because of routing considerations and connections on the north and south end of downtown, and is Metro Transit's preference. So the 3 options really refer then to the routes 10, 17, and 18, which is also the routing of the future F line and the Nicollet BRT. So looking at Hennepin Avenue, where the routes 11 and 25 are planned to go to, that street was just reconstructed and finished in 2022. And some of the amenities that were included as part of that street reconstruction, a new sidewalk, wider sidewalk, space for greening, a one-way bikeway behind the curb, enhanced transit stops in preparation for the E-line, which is anticipated to open later this year. So these investments already support transit riders moving forward. And then in terms of where investments will be made on the selected corridor or corridors moving forward. So two of the options include both Marquette and Second. So the improvements will be planned to be made on the selected corridors. It will include ADA ramp upgrades, as well as traffic signal upgrades where needed, BRT stations, which typically include elements like the new shelters, real-time signage, trash receptacles, benches, safety features, bike racks. And then we're also planning on transit priority markings on the corridor where the 10, 17, and 18 are moving to. And so the picture on top is Hennepin Avenue, showing some of those different amenities recently constructed. And the bottom picture is Lake Street, which gives an idea of something that might look similar to a potential selected corridor for the 10, 17, and 18. To move to question 3, summarizing what we've heard to date, we have undertaken, as I mentioned, 2 out of our 3 rounds of public engagement. Summaries for those are up on our website. And here's a summary of what we've done by the numbers, the scope of what we've undertaken. We designed multiple ways to connect with people online, at in-person events, virtual events, going to neighborhood meetings, and also spending time with transit riders, both on the bus and at bus stops, asking them what they thought of this idea of the three options, how it would impact them. And needless to say, many people think many things about this project. We've gotten the whole gamut, and it was really an important part of this work to hear directly through those hours of on-bus and intercept surveys, talking with folks about how they would be most impacted by this work. So just a little more detail on the three options. These maps show the three different options. As I noted, 11 and 25 would move to Hennepin, and those two routes together carry about 20% of the on and offs, so the people getting either on or off in downtown. And then the other three routes carry the remainder of the 80%. In option one, we would use Marquette southbound for transit, 2 lanes of transit, and northbound general purpose traffic. Second Avenue would have the reverse, so 2 lanes of northbound traffic and general purpose traffic running southbound. And the express service that currently uses Marquette and Second would remain. In option 2, the 10, 17, and 18, as well as future BRT, would use Marquette Avenue only, and that street would change to 2-directional buses and 2-directional general purpose traffic. An express service would use Second Avenue in that same fashion, so 2 lanes of transit only, 2 lanes of general purpose. And then in option 3, the local transit service and the BRT moves over to 3rd Avenue with bidirectional transit ways, taking the place of general purpose travel lanes, and express service would remain as it is today on Marquette and 2nd Avenue. So the goal of our feedback was to get, the goal of our engagement was to get feedback on these 3 options and which one best suited the needs of people downtown riding transit and others using these corridors. To go into a little more detail on phase 1, so this was late last summer, we introduced to the project the 3 options at a high level and solicited feedback on what people thought. And kind of as expected, there was a mix of feedback about the transit changes. This work is related to the infrastructure pieces of this project, this big vision of Nicollet Mall, and it's really out in front of that activation conversation. So there was a lot of questions about why, and what about Nicollet, and why are you talking to me about this if we're not talking about what's happening on Nicollet? And I think that's understandable, right? When people are being talked to or being in conversation about change and wanting to know the real rationale behind it. So as you can see from the top themes, this is a summary of the near 1,000 comments we got on our survey. A lot of these themes reflect things about what's happening on Nicollet, right? They're excited about Nicollet, they're concerned about Nicollet, they're concerned about the vacancy, that type of thing. The top themes that directly are going to be impacted by the decision about where to move transit really include concerns about walking distance to Nicollet Mall, and what sort of streetscape these new corridors, transit corridors, will have. How will transit speed and reliability be impacted, and what sort of safety improvements will there be for transit riders on these corridors? In our first phase of engagement, we asked the question about which option folks like best. Just over half of the people who responded, which was over 1,200 people, chose one of the 3 options, but there wasn't a clear forerunner about which of those 3 options was the best. And also, about a third of people did not want to see transit move from Nicollet Mall. This past winter, we engaged on this project again with a lot more details in terms of the different trade-offs of the 3 options, what the technical implications were for the 3, and all that information and the trade-offs are shown on our project website. people really continued to be honed in and talking about Nicollet Mall, ideas they thought that would improve the effort to pedestrianize Nicollet Mall. There was interest broadly in transit speed and reliability improvements downtown, and also the concern remained related to the impact of increased walking distance to key destinations, in particular for those with mobility devices or in the snow, or how does this relate or interact with skyways, and what these new transit corridors would feel and mean for folks. We asked folks to rank the 3 different options against our stated goals for the project around downtown vibrancy and downtown transit, and had over 1,500 responses. There was a split preference, but there was a slight preference for option 1, which was to move the buses to Marquette and 2nd Avenue in that one-way pair configuration, which is most similar to what exists out on Marquette and 2nd Avenue today. Moving to question 4, there's 2 parts to question 4, so this is actually the second part, but thought it would be helpful to put the ridership or the data pieces first. So this is showing all the requested data. Again, that 12,000 total ridership activity, those are people getting on and off, so somebody might be getting on in the morning, off in the evening, but the total ridership is number of trips per day on each of those routes. Let's see, riders on the routes that go down Nicollet Mall, so 10, 11, 17, 18, 25, are more likely than average compared to Minneapolis averages to be experiencing poverty, living in low-income households, without availability to a car, living with a disability. They're more likely to be Black, Indigenous, a person of color. You can see the way that stacks up against the 5 different combinations of where the different routes would move to, Hennepin versus one of the 3 options, compared to Minneapolis. So this highlights, right, that it is super important that we get this transit portion right, and we're committed to making sure that this works for folks who really, use transit, depend on it in order their day-to-day lives and where they're going. Question 4 focuses on impacts to travel time for a changed transit corridor. And so this is a really complicated question, given all the origins and destinations and all the different routes that convene on Nicollet Mall and all the different options. It's like a puzzle in 3 dimensions. So we address this looking at showing how long it will take or how much time will be gained, depending on where your destination is, both by walking and transit. So the average person walking a downtown block takes about 1.5 minutes. Now, this doesn't account for all the things. It doesn't account for a person's individual abilities, if they're using a mobility device, if there's snow, if you happen to hit all the red lights, right? This is an average speed. It's meant to be demonstrative of what this could look like for folks. And basically, if you're moving from Nicollet to the east, if your destination is to the east and you're on the 10, 17, or 18, your walking time will go down. If you're trying to go to the west and you're on one of those routes, it will go up, and then vice versa for the 11 and 25, right? So it's a little bit of a like choose your own adventure map and try to work out a scenario based on where you're coming from or going to. We also know that the transit time on Nicollet Mall right now averages 10 minutes to get from Washington to 12th Street, which is about a minute a block. The new time on any of these corridors would be 6 minutes, and this is Metro Transit analysis based on other transit-only lanes and the current run times on Hennepin Ave for the number 6 bus. So that is about an average savings of 24 seconds a block. Now, that savings is not linear, right? The transit speed is going to slow up or slow down depending on where the stop is, again, red lights, those types of things. But just to get an average of how you could start to kind of think about how this may impact a particular route. Also notable, in phase 2, we asked people, where are you trying to get to downtown? And people could choose many options. They weren't limited to one. 80% of people were trying to get to a destination on Nicollet Mall. Over half of the people were trying to get to Hennepin Avenue, so that's west of Nicollet, right? And then nearly 40% going to Marquette or Second, east of Nicollet. So there really is this puzzle, I don't know a better way, it's like a Rubik's Cube of things going on when we talk about impacts to travel time. Big picture, a lot of people want to get to Nicollet Mall, and without transit there may be some savings getting to Nicollet Mall in terms of your transit time, depending where north-south on that corridor and those 4-minute savings are, and then maybe some extra time walking. And again, if you're going somewhere else, that would change. Combinations on this one are literally in the thousands. Let's see. Another part of this question was about what would happen to the late night lineups. So this is a practice and a service that Metro Transit provides between midnight and 5 a.m. downtown. They line up all the buses relatively near each other, and the buses wait for 10 minutes to allow people to transfer between the buses downtown at this central, transfer point. So top of the hour, so 12, 1, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So Metro Transit has provided this initial diagram of how things would change. I know there's a lot on it, so I'll try to explain it. You can see on Hennepin right now, the 2 black dots show the existing lineup for the Hennepin buses. The Route 11 would join that group of lineup buses. Green is Nicollet, and it shows with the green circle where the existing lineup is. The existing Nicollet lineup, those would move to either Marquette, Second, or Third, depending on the option chosen. And then the lineup right now on 6th, 7th, and 8th may change. Metro Transit's committed to working through what makes the most sense for their riders, their customers, in terms of securing and providing a convenient transfer downtown during those hours. So that analysis of where exactly those would go under each scenario hasn't been done yet, but that would be part of the coming process once a selected corridor is chosen, or corridors. Okay, moving to question 5 about what are the existing preliminary plans for dedicated bus lanes in downtown. There are over 10 miles of existing transit priority lanes in the city. Many of those were installed in 2024, over 8 miles. You can see the list here. This is an image of the Hennepin-Lyndale Commons. And there were a number of corridors that were also installed prior to 2024, 7th Street downtown, and a small stretch of Chicago Avenue. Our Transportation Action Plan has 2 actions that talk to our plans for transit-only lanes. Transit Action 2.2 talks of a list of corridors to install transit-only lanes or other transit advantages. And Transit 2.3 talks about evaluating those types of treatments on those corridors. So some of these corridors, as noted, have already been undertaken. Other corridors, like portions of West Broadway and Central, have planned work about transit improvements currently happening. And then the last question is question 6. I'll first go over the preliminary traffic analysis and then the curbside uses and impacts there. Metro Transit provided estimates of these travel transit times, as I mentioned, based on existing data and operations in other bus-only lanes. Option 1, which again, Marquette and Second, both operating pretty similar to today, but moving over 3 routes. We'd see 4-minute faster transit trips between Washington and 12th. And in terms of the general purpose traffic, that would remain relatively similar to today. There wouldn't be any major changes, and traffic operations are anticipated to be akin to what they are now. Express transit is so there's 33 express routes that run on Marquette and Second. Those services are expected to run really similarly to today as well. The addition of these buses, there seems, under Metro Transit's analysis, there would be enough space within these 2 transit lanes to be able to operate similar to today. Option 2 is a little more complicated because we're changing traffic patterns with this one. Both Marquette and Second would have two-way general purpose traffic and 2 lanes of transit-only lanes. So we used a consultant to do a synchro analysis, a traffic analysis to analyze the intersection and corridor capacities, general traffic travel times. And we'd see really slight increases on travel time in Marquette and Second, all less than a minute between the corridor of 12th to Washington. The transit operations, same thing in terms of the routes 11, 25, routes 10, 17, and 18, and then the express transit could be slower, potentially. There's not the double transit lane here, so if an express bus is stopped in front of another express bus, that bus would need to merge into general purpose traffic if there was traffic there to pass a stop bus. So that is what that is referring to. Option 3, this is 3rd Avenue. There's more significant impacts projected to travel time. In the morning, we could see peak travel times increase by 5 to 6 minutes and 3 minutes in the afternoon. The transit travel time is again the same as options 1 and 2 for the 5 routes in question. And the express transit operations under this scenario would not be changed, so those would remain on Marquette and Second and not be impacted by this scenario. Now looking at curbside access and property impacts. So there's a couple ways to talk about this. All properties under any of these 3 scenarios would maintain all existing access to their property, their building, their driveway, their parking ramp, what have you. But there would be some impacts or potential conflicts added in. So under option 1, it would remain the same as today. Option 2, which has that 2-way traffic on both Marquette and Second, there would be new turning conflicts for approximately 30 left turn access and 20 right turn. So that just, that could present some challenges when it relates to either safety, queuing, that type of thing. It's just added new conflict points. And then option 3, there could be 2 driveways that are converted into right in, right out. And then there would be, under option 3, the proposed concept has a 2-way bikeway on the east side of 3rd Avenue behind the curb, and there would be 12 driveways that would cross that. So those are new conflict points with that potential bikeway. And then finally, the curbside use changes. Option 1, right now there's off-peak commercial loading on Marquette and 2nd Avenues. That would go away under option 1, and other curbside uses would remain. So that's that's on the transit side of both Marquette and 2nd on option 1. Option 2, there are 105 meters on northbound Marquette Avenue. Those would all be removed under option 2 to allow for that transit-only lane. There would be some off-peak parking opportunity or loading opportunity to northbound 2nd, and there would be a reduction of that off-peak parking capacity on southbound 2nd. And under option 3, all existing public parking, which is very limited currently, there's only 6 public parking meters, and the loading zone pull-out bay would be eliminated, and the non-public parking adjacent to City Hall would remain on 3rd Ave. So that is the answer to those questions. And in terms of what's next, in the coming weeks, staff at both in Minneapolis and Metro Transit will work a recommendation through on a preferred option, teeing up for a May round of public engagement on a preferred option, and the details of that planned engagement is shown here. open houses, offering again to meet with the different neighborhood organizations that we've been with, continued coordination with the suburban transit providers who currently operate on Marquette and Second, a potential Met Council Transportation Committee meeting. There'll be ongoing work on that Nicollet Mall activation. And then 2026 is when we anticipate buses moving from Nicollet Mall and transit on Hennepin and a new corridors. So that is what I have. Happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I do have one brief question on that last slide, and then I'll start the discussion. I just wanted to see when's the council's decision-making point in this slide?
Thank you, Chair Cashman, council members. We are working through the details of what, there are different pieces, how we work that through council, and we'll be in touch with you on what that is. We need to detail that out yet.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to note that, we've had a lengthy debate in the last month about how to pedestrianize a different street in our city and had a lot of conversations about the legality of doing that, creating an ordinance that would withstand objection of 50% of property owners. So I want to actually hear from our attorneys on this if we have to make amendments to the pedestrian mall ordinance. And if you don't know at this moment, then I think it's something we all need to get clarity on.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. There will have to be some changes to the ordinance given that there are going to be changes to Nicollet Avenue itself. However, the process of doing a brand new pedestrian mall is going to be quite different in this situation, as this is already noted as a pedestrian mall within ordinance. I cannot go over all the specific details at this time because I haven't spent a substantial amount of time with the ordinance looking over the specific details that will need to be made, but there will be some slight changes.
Okay, it's good to know that ordinance changes will be required, which will mean that we will have a public hearing because there are members here from Atrium Public Housing, and I'm hearing, my staff are on the phone literally at this moment with downtown residents downstairs who are wanting to weigh in to the council specifically, because I know your community engagement has been done with Public Works. So I will first recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Cashman, and thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. The city's website says that the city is moving transit routes off Nicollet Mall. It gives the indication that this is happening regardless of what people and the public think. My understanding is that the survey presented to the public that gave the ability to give input gave the indication that taking buses off Nicollet for pedestrianization was a foregone conclusion as well. Can you speak to the questions that were asked of in the survey? I believe that in the presentation that you gave, you said there was 3 options, right? Was there a fourth option, which is nothing happening?
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez, Chair Cashman. Yes, so people did, so this is in phase 1. We had a question about which option do you like best. And you can see people chose option 1, 2, and 3. Some people chose I don't know or I'm unsure. Some people said none, move transit to a different corridor, and some people said don't change it, no change.
And that was a question people could click, no, don't move it off, like no option? Like that was an actual multiple choice. My understanding was that people were given 3 options to choose, saying we're moving transit off Nicollet Mall. You have 3 options. Did people have the opportunity to click no?
Councilmember Chavez and Chair Cashman, I believe in phase 1, yes. This data, I can go back and double check the actual text of the survey, but this data.
It would be great if we can find that out during this committee meeting. I put in a request before this meeting to Public Works. I know it was a very last minute request, but I really want to have that information because from what I heard is that people were not given that option. And I want to be able to clarify for the public if they were given that option.
Councilmember Chavez, Chair Cashman, yes, we can clarify that. I will say that the premise of the work that we've been doing here, the premise is that transit is moving from the mall, and our goal was to work with, our goal is currently to work with Metro Transit and assess where suitable places for that transit to go to could be. So that is the direction that we have been tailoring our engagement toward, is trying to suss out what are the different pieces of this that are important to folks in terms of a move for transit.
Okay, thank you. So now that's concerning because we're hearing that the mayor is saying this is what's going to happen regardless of what you think. I'm going back to now looking at George Floyd Square, where we have been figuring out how we can pedestrianize that area. In an area in South Minneapolis, a working neighborhood, a poorer neighborhood compared to downtown Minneapolis. And then we're getting pushback from staff, pushback from the mayor saying you can't have a pedestrian mall at George Floyd Square, but somehow it's okay. We're going to have a pedestrian mall in downtown, an area that has more services and more wealth, and we want to take buses off there because there's poor people there. That is just, this is very hard when I'm looking at the pictures of a pedestrian mall, of the beautiful area that it could look like in downtown, and then now I have to go back to my residents and say, downtown can have everything that they want, and you don't get a choice whether you want pedestrian mall or not in downtown. It's happening because I want it to happen. I'll pick these 3 options. That is a hard pill to swallow. Now, the data is showing that the majority, at least folks, the preferred option here was no change, correct? I'm trying to understand where that number came from, because the data is showing that the preferred option is nothing, no change. It's in the gray. How did people decide that? Was it the comment section? How did that work?
Councilmember Chavez and Chair Cashman, we can get the direct question from the survey that came from. It's in our appendix, which is on our website, and potentially staff may be looking for it now.
Okay. We can ask that as a staff follow-up too, so that we can get it as a memo to our emails afterwards. You know, not on the spot.
Cool. All right, and I'll just finish with this. It is very telling, and you as a staff, this is not directed at you, this is directed towards the mayor that wants to take off buses off Nicollet Mall because it's going to be booming for businesses while scaring what South Minneapolis, that it's going to have a pedestrian mall over there, and it's going to be so bad, and so not good for the neighborhood, not good for the community, and that is just very frustrating. And we see it. The difference of treatment that people in South Minneapolis, in the working poor neighborhoods that we have compared to the areas that have wealthier businesses in the city, the type of differences that people see, and it is very frustrating, and that's not directed to you as a staff member. I appreciate the presentation that you are giving us, but I am very frustrated of what I very much see happening in the city all the time.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Osman.
Thank you for that presentation. In the beginning of the presentation, the idea was born from the mayor's vision, public-private partnership, and that's how the idea was born. It was born from the community, from the riders, and it's really sad people were not given 4 options. They were given 3 options, and there should have been an option where it says remaining on Nicollet Mall, especially when you talked about there was a ranked choice, a ranked choice for 3 options. I mean, 4 options is written information. That's just a difference. So I feel like that's a little bit misleading that people are not giving an option to choose that they want to remain. The reason I say that because people have been contacting me in my office. This is the busiest transit. Thousands of people come. It's a place where 25 years ago, myself as a writer, where I'm able to access everywhere else. Like it's easier to get around. That street brings any driver. Any rider to catch another bus and go over there and, think about all the. There's a food option there, there's pharmacy there, there's grocery there. You're taking them away, all those stuff away, all those people away from places that they don't. I can't recall third or, second having a grocery store or pharmacy. That's where it's a hub center for community. And it's good to have a pedestrian. It's really good, the events and so on. But we live in Minnesota. It's a winter. It's going to be 9 months empty section of no buses. In my opinion, I think there should be a flexible option where we can have, events and great things that we do and great activities, and buses can come back because buses are reliable. People are every day there, getting to work, getting to the doctors, and this is something that drivers have and residents of Minneapolis should have a say. And I'm really I can't really clarify, even if we have an option to vote on this, because it doesn't say that on that thing. Is there a MOU where we will have Metro Transit and the council agree? Does the body of council members have an option to say, no, we want to remain on Nicollet Mall? There's a lot of questions that is just out there that many of my residents want to know. But again, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm glad we listened to it and the public did.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. Just wanted to clarify some things and make sure that facts are stated. Nicollet Mall is already a pedestrian mall, correct?
Councilmember Vita, Chair Cashman, yes, with transit on it.
Okay.
Yes.
With transit only in emergency vehicles is what I recall.
Councilmember Vita, Chair Cashman, yes, I believe emergency vehicles can go down.
Okay,
Nicollet Mall as
so
well.
it already exists. It is in no way compared to 38th in Chicago, which is a major corridor in South Minneapolis. I mean, there's literally no comparison here. It's already, it exists on Nicollet Mall. It has for a very long time, and so I don't understand why we're even talking, why we're comparing the two. They're two very different streets. And just the last point I want to make, the last time I checked, up to 70% of the people on 38th in Chicago said that they didn't want the option that people keep bringing up. And so I'm sorry that, this is even a part of the conversation, but these are two very different areas. I appreciate the presentation. I've had some concerns about this project. I heard about the project from Councilmember Rainville, not the mayor's office, and I've appreciated over the past couple of years how engaged Councilmember Rainville has been on this very issue. I know it's a project that's near and dear to him. I've shared my concerns with staff. I appreciate the time you all have spent in the last couple of years answering the questions and trying to continue to figure out how we could make this work if it is going to work. Keep up the good work. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. Thank you, Kathleen, for your presentation, and just everyone who worked on this legislative directive, very helpful, illuminating information on this project. I don't have any questions right now for committee, and I don't have anything that I want to direct specifically to staff. And I want to preface the comments that I'm going to make has nothing to do with the good work that city staff have done on this and are working. There's a charge you're given and you're taking it up and you're doing the work, and I recognize that 100%. I, as a council member and a member of this committee, and a representative of constituents in the 12th Ward and transit riders on the 12th Ward, I have to kind of just say that I think we are not headed in a good governance direction as it comes to this project. I don't think we're setting ourselves up for success. And I think the place where I can probably point to is thinking about the work group that the mayor put together on this, and looking at the list of stakeholders that were a part of being in that work group. I think stakeholders are absolutely missing from it. Transit riders in particular, I think, should have been a part of this conversation, right? This isn't, while it might have the legal designation of pedestrian mall, this is a transit mall, right? We have held this up as a place for fast transit, for residents all throughout our city and outside of our city to come into downtown and leave downtown. I have many community members in the 12th Ward and also community members who have reached out outside of the 12th Ward that live in our city and work in our city, who have reached out concerned about what this means for them if the routes are changed. And I know we're talking about the conversation of it would be faster, a faster option, but I'm hearing from constituents like that doesn't factor into the walking time, that doesn't factor into my commute, like things could be lengthened for me. A stakeholder that's also missing, that is going to make this difficult for us as things come before the city council, is the city council, is members of climate and infrastructure committee. I don't want us to head down into a pathway where we have an MOU vote and there's not been a conversation with council members that have to take up this vote. Like, that's the place that we're in. And I think it's going to be a very difficult, continually difficult conversation, because I, as a council member, I'll just speak for myself, like, the way that I'm receiving this presentation is, it is said and done, and like, there is nothing that I have, an actionable step that I have to commit to doing. But I do know, just like by piecing things together, I will, and I will have to answer to my constituents and make a decision based off of their feedback, which is, a lot of them are deeply concerned about how this is going to impact their lives, and that's something that I have to respond to, as do other members. And I am also concerned about the demographic of people that are impacted by this change, and again, I don't think are represented within the stakeholders of this work group, right? Like public housing residents, people who only have the ability to rely on transit. That's how they get to work. That's how they move around our city. Predominantly people who are working class, lower income. And so I don't know, like I'm kind of like looking into the crystal ball, and I'm worried about what this means if there's an MOU that comes before us in 2025, like for summer of 2025, to have to say, yep, we agree to moving transit off of this corridor, and we have not been brought into the fold of this conversation. This is a moment where the executive side and the legislative side, it has to be able to talk. And I'm looking at it, and it's like another case of the left hand not talking to the right hand. And it's going to lead to having very difficult and divisive conversations in public, which is not something that I want. But I do feel it's important to represent the things that I'm hearing from community members as they're worried about this, and who gets to benefit out of this project. I'll plan on having offline conversations with staff about things that I'm hearing. There's a lot that I gleaned from this presentation that I want to process, but I just really felt that was worth mentioning here.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. I have one last question. I think you mentioned that the mayor, private companies, and the downtown council are the ones envisioning this process. Can you explain to us what that means and what that process entails?
Councilmember Chavez, Chair Cashman, Director of CPED, Eric Hansen.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good afternoon. My name is Eric Hansen. I am the Director of CPED. I thought that was my cue to come up and talk to you a little bit about this. So, Chair Cashman and Councilmember Chavez. So I think when we look at this project, it's complex. It's about the future of downtown and what the next era of our center of town is going to be. The timing of it is not linear. So when we're looking at how people are actively using downtown, downtown went into, the COVID pandemic was detrimental to downtown. Downtown is important to not only the health of the city, but the health of the region and the state. It is an economic engine, and it's not the only economic engine, but it is an economic engine of the city. And people have used it as the center of town since the beginning of the colonization of Minneapolis. We are seeing it transition. The last major transition of downtown was started in the late 1960s and built what we see here now. And that was around offices, that was around major facilities and theaters, and a little bit of housing, not much. And now this next trend is around consuming downtown in a different way. It's around how the buildings are used, how the streets are used, and how people are like congregating, not around the 8 to 4 workday, but around how downtown is a neighborhood. And we see that a lot. We see a lot of development that has happened in and around downtown. One of the things that downtown does not have a lot of, even though we're right on the banks of the Mississippi, is a lot of area for congregating of community. There's not a lot of parks downtown. It's, you know, if you look at our friends in St. Paul, they have the Rice Park and a couple other parks in downtown. We have Loring Park, we have Nicollet Mall, we have some semi-private areas that people, we have the Commons and then Riverfront Park. When this transition started during the COVID pandemic and people are starting to come back, they're looking for places to just enjoy Minneapolis. They want to find places where they can congregate. And we do not necessarily have those just out of the box because we don't have that land set aside in downtown. One of the ideas of how people are really consuming downtown is through where we can activate it for people, not for cars or vehicles, but for people. And so the idea here, based on some stakeholder engagement and interest, is how do we take Nicollet Mall and really make it the center, the spine, the main street of Minneapolis? And that is, you know, is from building face to building face. Can we get it so that it is some place where people can come, massive groups of people can come, and they're not necessarily impacted by worrying about buses, emergency vehicles, all of those things that come down Nicollet Mall now, and they can change and use that public space in a different way. And as part of that, it's what do you do with the buses? And that's why it's coming and we're talking about it, is because that thing gets in the way of these major events, these major daily events of congregating people on that public space. And so what can we do to look at options of where the bus is? And it's not taking away the transit service in downtown, but realigning the transit service potentially to transit dedicated lanes on Marquette and 2nd, which the city put in a lot of money to reorient how transit gets in and out, and a lot of it's preferencing those commuter routes. This would be, you know, direct local service, and you saw the demographic profile. More people are getting on and off of those buses and bringing them down. And if, let's say, they're on one street over from Nicollet, and there's a really amazing place for people to go on Nicollet, hopefully there's an interest in, yes, I can get downtown and I can get to something else. One of the things we are noticing is, and I heard Councilmember Osmond talk about this, is the interest of having people get off of transit next to pharmacies and stores and that sort of thing. And you might not see that on all of the streets in downtown. That's absolutely true. We're also not seeing that as often on Nicollet Mall. And that is something that is really causing us to pause about the future of retail services and activating storefronts. And maybe we need to start to look at how to congregate those type of uses on places where there is a lot of demand. And maybe we get some stuff on 2nd, and maybe we get some stuff on Marquette if we are able to do that. It's going to be less likely because that's kind of the building, the way the building are built. There's not as many opportunities. All of the storefronts are in Nicollet Mall because we have required that. We have required active storefronts, and we want to see those healthy and thriving so people can get their goods and services taken care of in downtown. And right now, we're kind of on a precipice of whether or not we can provide those services in downtown. And then finally, the other part of how people are consuming is people want to be downtown for other reasons, not just coming to work. And so some of the buildings that are now like guided towards office, they need to transition into different uses. And so we're doing a lot of work around, tax credits to potentially move that. We're looking at our process through the Development Services Division of CPED, of helping people move from an office use to maybe a residential use or some other things. We're looking at creative uses for buildings, because people want to be downtown, but they don't want to be they want to be in a cubicle as much as they used to be. And so that's another part and as we get more people downtown, more people living, I think we're up to 60,000 people downtown living, and once we get more people, we'll see more of that street activity, and there'll be more demand for that space, that public pedestrian space. And so this is part of it. Our colleagues in Public Works had to kind of go first. Something has to go first. But that's the idea here, is why stakeholders that are downtown, community organizations, the Downtown Council is one of our long-standing partners in activating things downtown. They did Holodazzle, they do other events, and hopefully they can help us with also fundraising for some of these really cool activities where people are going to want to be, and we're seeing people want to do that. So it's easy to break it into pieces and talk about just about what is going to be the experience of somebody on the mall moving to Second, but if you see it in a more complex view of it, it's possible and we're hopeful that actually downtown's actually much more inviting and inclusive of a place, with places where people can, set up shops and have parties and do some fun things if we have that space, and that's the thing that we're seeking right now.
Thank you, Director Hansen, for bringing in the CPET element to this, because that's a lot of the questions are about what's the cost to activate Nicollet Mall, but what's also the cost of activating all these streets that we're saying, transit riders should be taking instead.
I wasn't done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you. I didn't fully answer my question, but
Sure.
I appreciate that information being shared to the public. My question was more, in the presentation, I think it was mentioned that the Downtown Council, private companies, and the mayor were leading the envisioning session. I think it is important for the public to know which organizations are involved, because my concern is that transit riders, folks that live in the area, public housing residents, folks that actually live around the area are not being involved in the process. When I hear private companies and when I hear the Downtown Council, they serve a special interest in our city, which is economic development, private investment, you name it. But it has a different component than the regular transit rider, or pedestrian, or person that lives in the neighborhood. So I guess that's my question. I can follow up with administrative follow-up. My question would be for our clerk staff is who is in the mayor's, is it a work group that's working on this, or is it a?
Chair Cashman, Councilmember Chavez, it's the Downtown Action Council.
Okay.
The mayor's downtown. We can get you the list of the people on that council.
Thank you.
We can do that through a follow-up.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then my last comment is, I'm going to keep on saying this. I do not see this as different as the conversation we're having around George Floyd Square. I don't, and I'm not going to. I think that this is something I'm going to keep on talking about throughout this process, because it's clear that we're having, we're treating these as different things, but they're not. And I keep hearing the Cura survey being thrown around as a justification, and I just want to be clear that in the Cura survey, I didn't talk about this during the process, but I'm going to say it out loud right now. On December 4th, 2023, the organization Crime Watch Minneapolis posted news on the survey on social media, the survey that is being talked about, George Floyd Square. The text of their post included the link to the survey and the following message. This is a BS survey about what should be done with George Floyd Square at 38th in Chicago in Minneapolis, but fill it out anyways. We suggest a jail facility should go in place of the abandoned gas station. Get creative. In the 2 days, December 4th and December 5th, 2,019 responses were logged into the survey, constituting 34% of all responses received on that George Floyd Square survey. I also want to be clear, when it comes to Ward 9 demographics, the area I represent, it is majority renter. When it comes to the Cura survey, which had 5,896 responses, 75% of the respondents were homeowners. When it comes to Ward 9 demographics, 38.1% are white. When it came to the Cura survey, 75% of respondents, 69.78% were white. When it came to black residents in my ward, they represent 21.2%. When it came to the survey results, only 11.03% of respondents were black. When it came to the Latino community that I represent, it is 28.8% of my ward. When it came to the survey, they were only 9.9% of the survey respondents, right? So I just want to, the Cura survey keeps getting thrown around. it is not reflective of the diversity of the community that I represent. And when it keeps getting mentioned, I'm going to keep on saying the facts in the room. I don't see this any differently than the conversation of pedestrianizing George Floyd Square. I don't. And I feel like there is different interest in doing so. And I feel like when we're talking about pedestrianizing Nicollet Mall, the conversation is for who? Is it for the business interest or is it for the regular transit rider?
Next, I'll recognize Director Sexton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I did just want to respond to an earlier question. I don't recall if it was from Councilmember Chowdhury or Chavez about the council actions and where that involvement is going to take place. The legislative directive, we wanted to get this taken care of very quickly, so you might have noticed that it was sort of atypical. It was one cycle from introduction to response. And that was important because the staff is planning to get to a point where they're making recommendations to internally on this preferred option. And at that point, we're hoping to engage with council members, and Metro Transit and Met Council will also be doing the same. And so that's a point where we are planning conversations and having more robust conversation. I know we've briefed several council members along the way as well, but did just want to be clear that this is going to be a conversation between the administration and council, right? There is a role. In terms of what those actions are, we are still working through to determine what those official and formal actions are. But informally, we are planning conversations with many of you. We can do with more in terms of what that preferred option could look like, along with those final official approval steps. So we're just not quite there yet to define those, but I just wanted to be clear that we recognize there's a role, and we hope to work with you on that.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Osman.
No, I really want to appreciate Director Henson for coming up and explaining that. That actually changed my perspective of the idea of even thinking about it. The way you explained, the way that you see the future of downtown and economic involvement and what our city will look like in the future, that is something that we should be involved. We are the final decision makers. We're the one who say aye or no. So we should have been involved. That explanation gives us, that's the first time I heard about this whole Nicollet Mall. All I heard was, we're moving, and residents blowing my phone and saying, oh, no, that's not happening. But I just want to appreciate that, and I look forward longer involvement on this project. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair. Nicollet Mall is not for rich people. Nicollet Mall is for everybody. If you go down on Nicollet Mall, it is represented by everyone in this city at any given time of the day. It's a huge misconception, and it's really kind of sad to see these two streets be pitted against each other because, I mean, there are shelters near Nicollet Mall, and you see people who are unhoused on Nicollet Mall. You see people who are taking the bus to go to work on Nicollet Mall. You see people who are going to a basketball or a football game who don't even live in the city. You see people who just like looking at tall buildings in downtown Minneapolis. You see people of all ages, all races, all abilities down on Nicollet Mall. There is not one group of people. It is not a rich person's street. There's not signs out there saying, come wealthy, you're the only ones allowed on Nicollet Mall. Everyone has access to Nicollet Mall, rather they're walking and on a bus or whatever they're doing. So this is not that. This is not just because it's located somewhere that has a perception of being for wealthy people. Downtown is very different than it was 10 years ago. The people who live downtown look different than the people who maybe lived downtown 10, 20 years ago. The people who visit downtown looks very different. So like we really need to think about what we're saying here, or maybe we need to go visit downtown and see who's walking around accessing Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Chavez.
I'm going to make my point very clear. I am talking about the decision to remove buses off Nicollet Mall is that the decision to benefit the wealthy businesses and corporations, or is that to impact the working people that need access to this service in downtown? There are many working people in downtown. There are many public housing residents that need access to this corridor in downtown. The question I am begging for answers to, by removing buses off Nicollet Mall, are we doing that because we want to impact the working people of downtown, the residents of downtown that use this, or are we doing it to benefit the big businesses in our city? That is my point.
There are poor people who need accesses to buses on Chicago Avenue and 38th that are asking for them.
I wanted to jump in queue here as well. I do represent the majority of Nicollet Mall from 3rd all the way going south, so I am deeply involved in this project and have been since I joined the council. This project was pitched to me by the mayor, Minneapolis Foundation, and Councilmember Rainville. So I will concur with the fact that this did not arise from like transit riders wanting this change. This came from revitalization efforts in the sense of business and growth and using public spaces to facilitate that. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. I do think that pedestrianizing spaces is a great thing to do. I would love to see so many more pedestrian malls throughout the city, at GFS, throughout downtown, on Quincy, Northeast, like all of these spaces. I think that pedestrianization is good for business. The problem here is that in order to achieve that goal, we're talking about moving buses off. And what that means is 10,000 people per day have to move off. And so there's a tension here between how are we going to fill Nicollet Mall with all these people when the people who currently fill it are the ones who take the bus. And so are we going to be emptying the street by moving buses off? That's a huge concern for me. There's also a big taxpayer cost to this, because I think if we are going to improve transit on all these other streets, Marquette, 2nd, 3rd, Hennepin, which I think we should, we need benches, we need bus fountains, we need bus shelters, water fountains, bathrooms. These are all public amenities that we need throughout downtown. That costs money. So I'm very curious about that element because we are kind of in a budget squeeze right now. I saw $400,000 noted for programming on Nicollet Mall in 2026. I think that is nowhere near the cost that this project would take. And I think we need to be very clear about that before the council makes decisions about how to proceed. We're not in the same budget situation that we were last year. We're not going to be receiving federal grants. That's reality. And finally, I just wanted to point out, I thought it was interesting to hear that 80% of the users of Nicollet Mall Transit are coming to the services on Nicollet Mall. Some of my residents are here today that do go to the pharmacies, that do go to the Target, that do go to the medical facilities on Nicollet Mall. So there is a lot of services and people on Nicollet Mall for that reason. So I'll just close by reading a couple sentences from a letter I got from a Loring Park resident who's a bus operator who operates the buses on Nicollet Mall. Nicollet Mall is far from dead. The people who use Nicollet Mall are more people of color and typically have lower economic standing. People in expensive business suits were originally catered to, and 5 years later, there is one group of people who never left Nicollet Mall: bus riders. People know Nicollet Mall is the transit heart of the city. When you ride the bus, it is an incredibly important piece of infrastructure that functions essentially the same as it used to in 1962. Nicollet Mall is the central station. It's the heart of the city of Minneapolis. If we are truly concerned about bringing life and vitality back to Nicollet Mall, we should start with the people who never left throughout the 62 years, the bus riders. And so I will continue to center transit riders in this conversation who are my residents who live downtown, who take the bus, and who love Nicollet Mall because of the bus. And that doesn't, preclude us from making some decisions about a flexible option or transit improvements in other areas of downtown. But that is my position right now based on the feedback that I'm getting from my residents in downtown. And thank you for being here today. I'm not seeing anyone else in the queue. I'll just do a last call for any other discussion on this item before we. Yes, Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair Cashman. I'll keep it real short. This is just kind of in response to Director Sexton in terms of like points for council members to engage. While I appreciate that, I think like my point is we're headed in a direction where like the cake is like pretty much baked, and then we're going to have to make a very big decision, and we have not been included in the process. And I just want to remind folks that our job is not to rubber stamp. Our job is to represent 35 to 40,000 people in each ward that we represent. And like downtown revitalization is really important. I do care about that. And the changes that we make here are going to impact all of our constituents. And so I mentioned the mayor's stakeholder group because it's as if legislators and people who represent the community are not stakeholders in this, which we very well are. And I don't think informal meetings, one-off briefings is going to be sufficient enough to bring things together in terms of this stakeholder group, in terms of our constituents. And I just worry about coming to a big vote and that ending up in a place where nobody is happy and we're not going to figure out what to do in the future and reach our goals around downtown revitalization, making sure transit access for community members. And I think we have some time to figure out what's a better governance approach. I know council members up here are ready to lead on that, and I think a lot of that leadership is going to have to fall on the mayor of our city, and I just haven't seen that show up. So I just wanted to articulate more deeply, like, understand that there's points coming, but I think there needs to be more attention given to how we are gonna come together on this.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify for the clerks the two follow-up questions. One is about the members of the Downtown Action Group, and the other is the council's decision in this, including the ordinance changes that will need to be made. And I have to correct something from earlier today, just to clarify a public hearing date. So I'm going to call on Clerk Kendall to clarify that before we adjourn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to clarify on the record. Item number 10 on the consent agenda set a public hearing for April 8th. There is not a climate and infrastructure meeting that day. So the public hearing will be set for April 10th, and that will be reflected in the public hearing notices, but wanted to say on the record for the committee and for the public that it will be on April 10th. So thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Seeing no further business before the committee, we are adjourned.